Have you ever sent a text message that got completely taken out of context? I know I have. And I think, over the past 109 years, a fiery message sent by Titanic's wireless operator has been completely misunderstood, and even added to the growing list of myths surrounding the Titanic disaster. Let me explain. Before we begin, I just wanted to give a huge shout out to the new members of the Ocean Liner Designs crew through Patreon. Third Officer Air Wicker, Third Engineer Back Out and Join, Clerks Alexius and TLO, and Ordinary Ratings Sean and Jake too. Welcome aboard. So recently, I was reading this book, the hilariously self-titled memoir, Tramps and Ladies by Cunard, Commodore, Sir James Bisset. And I stumbled across a very interesting paragraph that sheds new light on a certain infamous wireless message exchange. Let me set the scene. It's April 13th, 1912. Titanic is en route to New York City on her maiden voyage when her wireless system breaks down. And for the two wireless operators, Jack Phillips and Harold Bride, this is more than a bit of a bummer, because there is a mountain of private messages that passengers are hoping to send to friends and loved ones waiting for them across the pond, and there's no way to send them. Famously, the Marconi manual explains that operators were not to attempt repairs at sea, and that they should relax, leave it, and wait to dock in New York, so an accredited Marconi technician could fix it up. Phillips, the absolute mad lad, decides to ignore this, because what else are rules for but to be broken, and fix it himself. So he does this through his off shift when he should be sleeping, and by the next day, the Marconi system was back up and running. By now, the mountain of passenger messages was huge, so Phillips and Bride worked hard to transmit as many messages as they could. Just after 11 PM, Titanic was about here, and Phillips was busy transmitting to Cape Race, which is all the way up here. So the signal was fairly weak, and Phillips had the set cranked to high power, so he could pick up the faint response. That is when the well-meaning, if bumbling, Californian cut in with a quick note saying, "I say, old man, we are stopped and surrounded by ice." The sound of this interjection burst through Phillips's headset, and he quickly fired back a legendary response. "Shut up! Shut up! I'm busy! I'm working Cape Race." Now the story goes that this rude response encouraged Californian's wireless operator, Cyril Evans, to dejectedly turn off his set and go to bed. Some have even allotted Phillips a portion of the blame for the lives lost in the disaster because of this. But our friend, James Bisset, offers a very different spin on the event. Ships equipped with wireless usually carried only one operator. It had not occurred to ship owners that 3 operators are required to stand watches in rotation for an efficient 24-hour service per day. The main duty of the operators was to send and receive commercial Marconigrams for passengers to and from shore stations, which relayed them as telegrams. When Marconigram business was slack, the operators and ships gossiped, unofficially with one another, often in a joking and sometimes profane and insulting manner. The operators nearly always knew what ships were within range, and exchanged at least identification signals and brief messages of greeting. There was no systematic organisation of the use of wavelengths. The operators manipulated their crystal detectors until they heard signals and then joined in, listening for anything of interest or sometimes chipping in with a comment of their own identification. Frequently, an operator transmitting Marconigrams would signal to another in his neighbourhood QRL, meaning keep quiet, I'm busy, or G to H, get to hell. They were a fraternity of pioneers, considered to be cranks, and had the curious habit of addressing one another as OM, old man. A common signal exchange between them was GTH OM QRL, which means go to hell, old man, shut up, I'm busy. Acknowledgement of an identification was often TU OM GN, thank you, old man, good night. So a few takeaways here. First, these Marconi men were a new breed of tech geek, proud of their work, and they probably all knew each other as colleagues and friends. Second, they chatted very informally with abbreviations, not unlike what those of us with Blackberries had to use in the 2000s. And third, they often used shocking language, specifically get to hell and shut up, in a jovial and to be expected kind of way. It came with the territory. In fact, they had to get used to telling people to shut up, as Bisset explains. Nearing the shore on both sides of the Atlantic, conditions in the ether were made chaotic by the activities of hundreds of amateurs known as tin can operators, who cut in on ships' messages with their own comments, sometimes frivolous or sarcastic. These pests faded 150 miles from the shore, but even in mid-ocean, there were usually half a dozen or more ships within range of one another at any time, and many of the operators, having met on shore or in training schools, were personally acquainted. In fact, usage of the term go to hell was so shocking at the time that it led to one of my favourite exchanges at the US Senate inquiry into the disaster. Fifth Officer Harold Lowe had famously told the chairman of the White Star Line, Bruce Ismay, to get out of the way when he was making a nuisance of himself. And at the inquiry, Senator Smith was keen to ask him all about it. The transcript went thus. Do you know any of the men who assisted in lowering that lifeboat? No, sir, I do not by name, but there is a man here, and had he not been here, I should not have known that I had ordered Mr. Ismay away from the boat. Did you order Mr. Ismay away from the boat? I did, sir. What did you say to him? This was on the starboard side. I don't know his name, but I know him by sight. He is a steward. He spoke to me on board the Carpathia. He asked me if I knew what I had said to Mr. Ismay. I said, I don't know Mr. Ismay. Well, he said, you used very, very strong language with him. I said, did I? I said, I cannot help it if I did. He says, yes, you did. And he repeated the words. If you wish me to repeat them, I will do so. If you do not, I will not. I will first ask you this. What was the occasion for your using this harsh language to Mr. Ismay? The occasion for using the language I did was because Mr. Ismay was over-anxious and he was getting a trifle excited. He said, lower away, lower away, lower away. I said, well, let it be. Ismay cuts in here. He says, give us what you said. To which Lowe fires back, the chairman is examining me. Mr. Ismay, you asked the witness to give the language? I have no objections to his giving it. It was not very parliamentary. If the language is inappropriate, there is only one word that might be so considered. May I suggest that it be put on a piece of paper and given to you, Mr. Chairman, and you decide? All right, write it down. Lowe wrote it down on a piece of paper and then handed it to Smith. You may put that into the record that you said, you wish me to repeat it, sir? You uttered this to Mr. Ismay? Yes, that was in the heat of the moment. What did you say to him? Do you want me to repeat that statement? Yes, sir. I told him, if you will get to hell out of that, I should be able to do something. Shocking. So clearly, Marconi men were used to talking to each other in a vulgar way. Was Jack Phillips being a rude jerk when he told Californian to shut up? According to James Bisset, not really. He was just using the typical professional banter of the time. Was Cyril Evans so offended that he turned his set off and went to sleep? Probably not. He may have even chuckled about the response before turning into bed. There's a saying that goes, shut up, shut up. I'm busy. I am on YouTube. There's a saying that goes, the past is a foreign country. They do things differently there. Without the proper context, sometimes we interpret historic interactions completely incorrectly. The real reason Jack Phillips was rude? He wasn't. Thank you so much for watching. Are you subscribed? You should subscribe. I'm aiming to get more videos out more often, and you'd hate to miss out on one. As always, thank you so much for watching. Stay happy, stay safe, and I'll see you again next time. I should probably message back.